what I'm surprised about with the decommunization is that there's been such a hullabaloo about it. And there was this open letter signed by a huge number of academics. Sadly, I know at least one of them who told me that he signed this open letter and he hadn't even read the laws. Luke and Wei, by the way. So the person in charge of Ukrainian studies, Ukrainian politics, at the Monk Center in the University of Toronto, signed this open letter attacking the decommunization laws and hadn't even read them. I suspect many others had not read them who signed that open letter as well. So why did they do that? I mean, you have four for your viewers, just to quickly recap, you have 4 laws which they're not really controversial. The first one is maybe the most controversial to some degree. It recognizes, and I use the word carefully, fighters, not heroes, fighters for Ukrainian independence in the 20th century. And in the law, there's a massive list of people going from 1917 through to the dissidents and the contemporary period. OUN and UPA are just one of a huge number of organizations and structures. Secondly, is access to archives. I'm sure as a historian, you'll be very happy with that. I've worked in those archives, by the way, in Kiev on Soviet war against Ukrainian dissidents. It's excellent. 3, the move from this Soviet mythology around Soviet and contemporary Russian mythology of the Great Patriotic War to World War II. Why should we be opposed to that as well? And fourthly, prohibiting communist and Nazi propaganda. Again, if it was just communist, I would understand, but it's prohibiting both. Again, what's wrong with that? I know that historians are not as big as political scientists in terms of comparative work, but comparative is sometimes interesting. Germany has done an incredible job in denazification after World War II. My father was a slave laborer in Germany, he's been getting a pension from the German government since the 1970s. Austria never did that. And that is why today Austrian fascists and nationalists are able to get nearly 50% of the vote in Austria. So prohibiting and decommunizing the communist or totalitarian ideologies, communist and Nazi propaganda, to me is fine. So of those 4 laws, 3 of them should be zero controversy. The first one, okay, if you don't want to include in the list of fighters for Ukrainian independence or UNUPA, then that would be the only thing you could quibble with. But what else? I give the floor to David.
Well, yes, and maybe I'm the appropriate person to give the floor to, since I'm the author of the open letter.
Well, now I found the guilty party.
Not just me, also James Scher. I would say we wrote it together. And the reason, we were disturbed on a number of grounds by these memory laws. First of all, the lack of discussion. Despite the previous debates in Ukraine, which were completely ignored, the debates among historians, the putting together the Nazis and communists, to my mind, was an act of subterfuge, that you simply say one is equivalent to the other without any further ado, and it becomes law. There should not be any Nazi symbols in Ukraine in 2015. If there were, I'd be rather surprised. Unless, of course, you're talking to, maybe some of these battalions that are using some symbols very similar to the...
Football hooligans use them. Football hooligans sometimes use them.
Football hooligans might use them. The danger, I think, is on limiting inquiry. And by signaling that historians, for example, or political science or whomever, cannot criticize any figure on this list of fighters for independence in the 20th century is a dangerous precedent. And it happened to include, just by chance, Roman Shukevich and Stepan Bandera, OUN and UPA. Who did it omit? Very interesting who it omitted. Just absolutely every single person involved with the Communist Party in any way, shape or form. And as I mentioned on this YouTube before, by denying anybody who was in the Communist Party any kind of role in the building of Ukrainian independence, you're simply rewriting the past.